if you're a marketer, I'm going to apologize in advance, but it's been a hijacking by marketers. So there were all of these beautiful healers. I've been doing this work for years and years. I did not start off in a personal development space. I started off in churches and in working on crisis intervention hotlines. So I was a nonprofit and a spiritual person who connected my understanding of what I was doing to thousands and thousands of years of temple service, where there was no expectation that we needed to build a brand, um, like offer things that were thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm fine with people making money. This is not um, any problem with money. But what I get really weirded out about is folks, I watch these marketing messages come across Facebook constantly, and I'm like, you are marketing to the wrong person, buddy. Like anybody who says to me, like, if you are still doing individual coaching, then you're wasting your energy. You should have a evergreen program. It makes me nuts because I go, you know what? Humans need to connect with each other. That's part of why my commitment this year has been to do almost nothing recorded. Um, if you come to one of my live classes, we record stuff so you can listen later. But I want people to be present to each other. And when I hear people say like, "Oh, you should be doing group classes, you should be doing evergreen programs where they're all recorded, so you don't have to work so hard," I think, can you imagine if a doctor did the same thing? Can you imagine if you were feeling unwell and your doctor said, well, it'd be really nice for me to see you individually, but I have decided that I am much more profitable if I do an evergreen audio course. So please listen to this recording and self-diagnose without my years and years of medical training and any reflection from me. So many of these things that we're offering are just nuts. And so I'm going to call that out. A lot of the models are really broken. So when people are offering something that has value, that's why I like that you made that distinction. So meaning that it actually has a transformative effect if we're healers. If you're a massage therapist, like I'm going to offer a massage that's going to help you, and maybe I'm going to offer 10 massages because that's what you need, um, to really get the healing and the movement you want. But for me, when we're adding value to another human being, it's the same as breathing out, right? Your purpose is breathing the value out to other people. If I'm a body worker, which I did for years, and it's another one of those ones where I'm just like, this is crazy. Let's do an evergreen body work program? No. There's places where that's useful, but there's places where it makes no sense. And people
Right.
keep telling everybody you're supposed to be doing this. Um, but if I'm adding value to the person, that is simply part of the flow, right? So there's a ripple effect. If somebody is in pain when I was a body worker and they would come into my office, like can't move, like stiff, they can't really engage life too much. But then, we do some stretches. I did Thai work for a long time. I love Thai massage. Um, and they would get off the mat on the floor usually, and they just move, and they would look happy, and they would give me a big hug, and they would be like, thank you so much. I know that person's going to go home and they're going to be much more kind to their family. They're going to be having an easier time being creative. They're going to do more work. So again, the value is extended. So I think there's a significant need for us in the personal development world to rethink the places we're adding value and really interrogate, is this adding value, or is this just a way to line my pockets? Again, no problem with your pockets being lined, and you being comfortable. But is this in alignment? Is this right livelihood, as the Buddhists would call it? And right livelihood to me is not offering something that is inadequate and then hoping it will have a result and pretending that you didn't notice that it wouldn't. Does that make sense? I know I'm a little cranky about that. I actually teach a program called Love Cells, which is completely about yin marketing. It's about Buddhist-ish sales because I do this non-attached sales thing. So every time somebody at a business training tells me I need to overcome objections, I'm like, no, I work with adults. I don't have to overcome anything. I have to listen to the person I'm seeing and respect their opinion, and if it's the right fit, it's the right fit. Those kind of things that we have incorporated into our understanding of healing community, it's poison. And This is part of, for me, the healing center that I've been working with is to collaborate with folks. So we go, you know what? I don't have to be in my crazy little silo that says I have all the answers. I'm going to offer the next course and the next course and the next course. I refer people to other people all the time. I don't need to be everything. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox for a minute. You can tell I have a lot of energy around that. I want people to be healers in a way that respects the traditions they're from, and also make some money. And I will acknowledge one of the things that's different is for thousands of years, healers never had to worry about making money. It's part of why we're so bad at it, um, because we would have been in temple service, and the temple, donations would have come to the temple to feed us. We would have had a place to stay, and for many of us, that would have been plenty. Honestly, like, I could be a monk in a tiny little cell as long as the food was taken care of, and I could write and I could study and I could teach. To me, that sounds really appealing. Um, but there's no place for that for me right now. What other questions do we have? And I don't know how long we're going, so it's up to you. I'm just here. I'm along
Yeah.
for the journey.
Belinda said that that was absolutely wonderful. I really get it. Yeah, I just it really I love the way that bring it back to the alignment. Always bring it back to the alignment,
Mm.
and then from there, then the expansion, like the energetic expansion for the for whatever service or whatever value you're offering, can then have a life of its own that is having that connection to source as well. So we have someone shared their purpose that they saw a place I wanted to live and expand more people and teach creativity, play, and spirituality, from Patricia. And then
Oh, Patricia,
Nalima.
that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Love it.
so pretty. And then Nalima mentioned beautiful to experience being part of the whole, breathing through me. I couldn't see my purpose, though it is what I'm here for and greater than me.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about purpose for a second?
Yeah.
This is such an interesting question. Um, I'll be a little funny here too, but there are some really big misunderstandings around this purpose work. One of my favorite ones is people often misquote Joseph Campbell, who said, "Follow your bliss, and the universe will open doors where you didn't know they existed." Now, that is very different than the misquotation that says, "Follow your bliss, and the money will follow." That is a marketer's ploy. So one of the things that the reason I'm pointing this out is our purpose is sometimes our bliss, it's sometimes our struggle, and often we're told that our purpose is something that we're given. Now, for some people, if that is your spiritual tradition, sorry, I have this a million little beeps going. There we go. We stopped those. So if you believe that your purpose is given from someone else, I'm okay with that. But for most of us, we get really hung up on the fact that I don't know what my purpose is. I'm supposed to have this one big, huge life purpose that's going to take me to the rest of my life. That's a lot of pressure to put on anybody. So what I usually do with folks when they're trying to figure out what their purpose is I follow the work of Stephen Levine. Stephen Levine was this phenomenal Sufi Buddhist kind of interesting. He and his wife kind of left a particular tradition and were just eclectic. They were kind of modern day mystics. And he wrote this beautiful book called A Year to Live. And in A Year to Live, he asked the question, if this was my last year to live, what would be important to me? To me, that's the easiest way to get to purpose. Um, and what I usually do is I do it for a year, and I actually engage this process for like physical time for a year, a few years ago, where I took every day and I was like, okay, 365 days. If I was at 364, if I was at 363, all the way down to like, if this was my last day to live, what would be important to me? And when you're hanging in that space, your bigger purpose becomes more obvious in some sense, because our purpose is always grounded first in who we be, not what we do or what we have. So when we take the big purpose, like for me, the purpose to create this learning center, and I don't know, I may complete that in a year or two, that, and there may be another purpose that comes. But when I take that, who I be first and foremost is a stand for truth. It's a stand for compassion. It's a stand for empathy and connection. And it's this place where I acknowledge the wholeness of every person I encounter. That's just who I be, right? I can live that purpose right now and I can expand into something else. But if I don't live into the being, the purpose doesn't have any room to grow. So I love Nalima. You could feel it, which is fine. Just feel it. Feel the like, oh, this feels really good. This is who I be, and I don't need to see all the details. You may be growing into it. It may adjust. So I'm poking a little bit because I just feel like people get so pressured. I've seen all these books about find your purpose, and then we get this fear of like, what if I got it wrong? It's like buying a car. It's a big expensive thing. What if I buy the wrong car? Well, if I buy the wrong car, I'll trade this one in and I'll get another one. It'll be okay. There'll be another car. But it's not like it's not like you're sentenced to your purpose. So I just want folks to have the capacity to play and to change and to move in the ways that feel appropriate for them. So hopefully.
Beautiful. Yeah. So if you wanted to also just, as you're listening to this and tune into who you be as your purpose, like feel free to, jot that down in the chat or like jot that down in your notebook so that you can really integrate the sensation of, okay, like, what is that purpose inside? And Scott, like I really love the way that you have that like big distinction of big purpose, little purpose, or rather inside purpose, outside purpose, just similar to your big breath, little breath type of scenario. So it's nice to it's nice to collect and embody the beingness of something and then also translate that into action. So we have a question around that, and question around marketing and selling, and how people when the Lima gets excited to learn, but when it comes to action, the brakes come on. So
Yeah, it's because so many of us have been taught this toxic way of selling and marketing. And of course, we don't feel good about it. We're healers. I'm assuming most of the people in this room have some relationship to that term healer. Um, we're not like at some level, a healer's job is to be a truth teller to the body and as a mirror, or the spirit, right? We sit with people and we help them see what's true for them. Most of the way we've been taught to market is to lie and manipulate to people, to push them to buy things they don't need. And that doesn't have to be the case. Like marketing, when it's done well, is important and powerful and really useful. When I have something come across my email or a class that is something I really need, that I want, that's information that's like really helping me with something, then marketing is beautiful. I'm like, yes, please bring on more. Of course, I want to learn this. I feel like um, when we do non-interruptive marketing that's pushing somebody, um, basically by telling them they're not enough, that's so much of the foundation of marketing, right? If you just had this toothpaste and these bright white teeth, then you would be loved and you would be popular and everybody would pay you more. It's like, what? I don't think so, right? But we're telling people constantly they're not enough, and if they just buy this thing they could be enough. If we're not using that message and instead we say, from a marketing perspective, look, like I have important things that you're needing. Like if you had the cure to cancer, Nalima actually works in menopause, which I think is such an important area that so many women I've talked to over the years have not had enough information because people just don't tell them about it. There's not good, I've had a couple clients who that's what they do. But if you had the cure to cancer, you would have no fear about saying, hey, everybody, I got to tell you, I got the cure to cancer. This is really important. That would be giving people information they needed. Now, sales, we've been taught to be pushy, overwhelming, to push people into things they don't want. So I practice this thing that I call non attached sales. Um, I usually ask people way more questions than I talk to them. I'm not telling them you must do this. Um, and I empower people. It was really lucky. Some of you may know Daniel Schattenberger's work. He's a futurist. He's spoken a couple times at a group I'm part of. And I was sitting in a room with him a few years ago, and he said to me, well, said to the group of pretty high-powered leaders, um, anything you're doing in your marketing that is not adding to the agency of your potential clients, stop immediately. And what he meant by that is all of these ways that you're taking power away from people, you're making them feel small, you're manipulating them. Stop it. Because when you enter into a relationship with people and they need something you have and they can trust you, they will lean into you. But we've also got this really quick, like, I need to sell this now, and I need things to be numbers. Like, I did some business training when I first left the academic world because I decided about 14 years ago I never wanted to work for anybody again. I had been a university professor, like I started doing the math around how many people I was teaching. Like, I would have 80 people in a classroom. They're all paying like $300-400. And I was like, okay, so the university is making like, I don't know, $50,000-60,000. I figured this out. And I was making 1,500. And it was like, that doesn't seem like a very good deal. And they, I got a TA out of it, but I'm like, but that's 80 people in one of my classes. Um, so I decided that I never wanted to work for anybody again. I wanted to have my freedom. I wanted to write. I wanted to be creative and to play, but I knew nothing about business. So I went and I did a bunch of business training, and I cannot tell you how often I would leave these business trainings feeling like I needed to take a shower. It was like, why on earth would I ever do that? I remember my favorite, I don't know if anybody's ever had somebody teach you this, but at one point in a training, somebody said to me, oh, if a client says I can't afford it, offer to sit down with them and help them figure out their finances. And I was like, oh my God, if somebody did that to me, I like, what? No, that's not happening. That feels weird and invasive. Did you just become a financial planner? Um, so we've been taught all these things that are just crazy. The reality for me is there is plenty work for every healer that I know. In fact, there's more than enough work for us because, especially after COVID, like, we're going to be looking at a couple years worth of trauma um, unraveling. So those of us who do trauma work, which is body-based work, which is therapeutic work, which is energy work, we're all going to be pretty in demand. The world needs us, but we have to enter into a relationship with people in a way that they can trust us. That's a big answer. I know this is particularly on my soapbox. But Shani, do you mind if I answer Sean's question?
Yeah, go for it.
So I see that Sean says, how do we guide people to know their alignment or they're being aligned if there's somebody who has little awareness in their body? This is a brilliant question. Um, I was in class years and years ago when I did my first coaching training, about the same time I left the academic world. Still kind of in it, but not teaching in universities. Um, and I remember being in a room with a woman who had been one of the first Philharmonic conductors in the US. So this is a major thing, big role. And she was fascinating. I love this woman. I was so engaged by her presence. And she came in one week and she said, I had this major realization. It was like a headline that came across my mind. Woman discovers she has a body below her neck. And it's there's some humor in that, but it was also, she was a woman who had been denying her physical experience for years and years and years and years. And it's like, because she'd been in such a man's world in part, and she was a larger woman, and there was a lot of messages that told her her body was the wrong size. And so, well, if I can just deny this humanity of me. So so I think a lot of people have a hard time connecting to their bodies, especially when what their bodies are telling them is, this world you're living in makes no sense. This, we're kids and we're told to sit in a desk in a row for hours on end and listen to some person recite things to us that aren't even accurate anymore, like mama bird, and we're supposed to, throw those facts back up. We know our bodies are supposed to do something else. We know we're supposed to get up and move. We know learning works better if we're bilaterally integrating, but we're taught over and over, ignore your body, disconnect from your body. So this is very common with me, with the work I do with people. So the very beginning of this is usually just to get people to breathe and get them to notice the simplest place in their body. There's a really simple thing you can, if you're a coach or healer, you can remember is, when somebody has something, it's always easier to create more of it than when they have nothing. So if somebody says to me, I have no experience of my body, um, I I could go, okay, cool. So I could throw this glass at you and you wouldn't notice. And be like, oh, of course I would feel that. Oh, okay. So you experience a little of your body. I like to tease people. You have to be really careful and have good rapport to do that. But I like to get some humor in. Humor actually adds to like moves us into parasympathetic nervous system. So like, of course I would feel that. Oh, okay, cool. If you clap your hands, can you feel that? Oh, okay, cool. So if I can notice the feeling of my hands clapping or the breath as it expands, like as I'm breathing right now, I'm noticing my rib cage is a little tight because I've been carrying things up and down stairs. Right. I just went to my chiropractor yesterday to open that up. But they might notice, like, oh, I have a little pain. Okay, cool. We can notice a little pain. We just want to appreciate any part of somebody that they can feel. And then we just start to notice if they can feel anything else, and they will be able to come back home to their bodies quicker than they think, because they've been noticing stuff their whole life. They've just been telling their brain, don't pay attention to this. Because we go from being kids in desks looking at a teacher to adults in desks looking at a computer screen. Over and over, where our bodies are trained to be ignored. It's been how our culture has been created. So hopefully that helps, Sean. I think that's such a powerful question, and I think so many of us um, will be working with people who have been trained to ignore the body.
It's so beautiful to just retune into alignment and retune into your body all the time. Let's talk about that flow and the aspect of it of when you are in flow, or how do you see, I feel like you've already touched on this, but I just kind of want to bring it back together today for the area of prosperity, the area of synchronicity, and the
Mhm.
area of, purpose.
Well, it's interesting. Flow, and I don't think I understood this. I studied a ton of Csikszentmihalyi's work, who's the person who,
Mm-hmm.
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi coined the term flow. He actually teaches now at the grad school that I went to, but he came in about a year after I left, a year or two. Um, but I had read all of his work and I'd studied flow quite a bit. Generally, when we talk about flow in an academic sense, it's around this place where we lose ourselves, in a good way. So there's usually a bit of challenge. So it's not something easy. When people say they want life to be easy, I'm like, not really. You'll be bored. You'll become a domesticated animal. I've been thinking about this a lot with weight lately, because I've gained a little weight during COVID. I think a lot of us have, and so I've been thinking about what happens to animals when they're kept in cages. They're not allowed to move the way their bodies naturally would, and I'm like, of course we would gain weight. Of course, if we're not connected to our purpose, our natural connection to life. But usually this flow experience is when we lose ourselves. We've got a little bit of challenge. He would define this as an appropriate amount of challenge. So it's not so hard that we can't possibly hope to get it, but it's not so easy that we just get it right away. And it's those times when, so for some of you it'll be writing, for some of you it'll be doing your work, that you look up at the clock and all of a sudden it's like 2 hours have flown by. So that's one form of flow. And that's usually what I think when people are experiencing their purpose. But part of what has been really fun to recognize is that is only one of the flavors of flow. So the one that I've been hanging out in the most lately is what I call third circle. So third circle, for those of you who've done self-expansion with me in any place you've done that with me, it's this place where we connect into what's sacred. It's sort of a modern day mystic trick that we all have access to. Our brains are wired for it. Um, it's part and parcel of what humans are set to do. So like if you haven't had this experience, or don't know what I'm talking about, if we've all had this experience, I'll say this first. So you may have had it while you, for me, when I walked over the ridge to see the San Francisco Bay when I lived in the city, and I would be walking up a hill and not see the bay, and all of a sudden the bay just opens in front of you. Um, at other times growing up in DC, in the DC area, when the cherry blossoms are just everywhere, and you're like, you marvel in the magnificence of the cherry blossoms, and there's a place where you forget that you're separate from them. It's just like, oh, yeah. What a marvel, what a wonder to be alive. When I was really little, the places this would happen for me were looking up at the night sky. We don't have as dark skies anymore. There's a lot of kind of trash light, so it's harder to see them the way we could when I was little. But there's places you can go, and you look up at the sky and you go, wow, we're one tiny rock around one star, and I'm looking at millions of stars. Like, how can you be anything but in awe of life and how small we are. We talked about being an ant on the back of a whale. That's just on our planet. Like, how small are we compared to all of those stars and all of those solar systems we can't even see with the naked eye, right? So that's a whole nother set of flow. And when you talk about when synchronicity really happens, for me, the third circle is where synchronicity just shows up like crazy. I'll give you a nutty, fun example. Um, right now, I have a backdrop on because I just moved and my place is a mess, and I didn't want to bring you into the messiness. But I have been obsessed by octopi lately. I don't know why they're calling to me. I've like bought an octopus rug that I'm sitting on. Well, one of the synchronicities that happened, I was telling Honey about this before the call, in it is I set up this apartment. I moved in. I figured out, oh, there's this beautiful chandelier in my living room or dining room, whatever you want to call it. And I just thought, oh, nice light. I didn't even notice it when I first came because there's 15-foot ceilings and a giant window that looks out onto Mount Hood, this beautiful mountain, and I can see the rivers, which is my favorite thing in Portland. So that's where all my attention went. Well, my massage therapist was over. It's one of the ways I take care of myself and stay in my body. I'm laying on my back, looking up. All of a sudden, I look at this chandelier and I realized that it has 8 little segments that come out perfectly evenly and a centerpiece. And I went, that's an octopus. I have been obsessed with octopi, and I found an apartment that has an octopus chandelier. I mean, talk about like weird synchronicities, and then to not notice it. Now, to me, that's the stuff that only happens when we step into third circle. And it's easiest to step in third circle when we're supported. So, one of the things that I didn't hear anybody comment about in the purpose exercise is when more than one person is breathing into our purpose, magic happens, right? In every tradition, in the Christian tradition, there was this when two or more of you are gathered together, magic happens. But that's every tradition. Wicca has circles, every way that we can think about people gathering to create. Um, so that's the place to me, when we're not going to third circle, we're kind of going to this place where we create and play together. And we recognize that we are not separate from those other people, which is this crazy thing that Americans, Westerners particularly believe. The Dalai Lama calls this one of the big sicknesses of the Western world, is that we can be isolated anywhere because we think that there's this boundary between us. Versus when we start to hold the notion that we're just energy slowing down enough to have an experience, because then we can start to go, oh, when we get a little faster, we're just all energy, right? We're just like all the water in the ocean connecting to each other. So for me, flow, synchronicity, prosperity come from allowing ourselves to be open, from allowing ourselves to be aligned. And you will know if you're not aligned. It's so obvious if we allow ourselves to listen to ourselves. And it's not quite intuition. It's more of a sense of like, something in me does not feel right about this. Um, Different intuition is usually, I think about intuition as intuitive intelligence. Um, but when inside of you, you're like, this just smells funny. I can't remember which one of my friends says that, but this just smells funny. There's something off here. You will know you're out of alignment. As soon as you have that sense, if you can just begin to notice in your body where you feel some alignment, be in conversation with that part. The technique I taught earlier, we taught as a way to move emotion, but we can also use it as a way to expand emotion. So if I say in the same way, can you feel into your body and find a place that is aligned now, right? Anything we can find some of, we can create more of. So, oh yeah, my heart feels really aligned. Like, you were an easy yes, honey, because I love the work you do. It's like, of course I would. Like, in my heart, immediately I know, yeah, I feel aligned with honey. I love the work she's doing. I love the people she's gathering. If I had felt into that, which I do for every invitation I get, and I'm like, like something doesn't smell right here, I would have spent a little time with it to see if there was a way to make it work. Um, and if not, I would just say, well, thank you so much for the invitation, but this isn't the time. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think it definitely Like I like the way you answer questions too. You really just take the you take the lid off of it and then everything just feels really great and you're like not only are you delivering your answer on one level of, intellectual understanding, but also the actual energy field of the answer. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so since you noticed that, I want to name something for those of you who are teachers. Usually questions are getting answered by our small selves. So when I answer questions, I try to answer the small self question, but also speak to the larger self. So Buddhists would call this small mind, big, larger mind. There's different ways to think about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with small self. Sometimes I just talk about that as human self and evolutionary self in my frame. But that part of us that just wants comfort, um, there's a survival self. That sometimes questions are coming out of that part of us that wants comfort, safety. So if we have to always have to answer those parts, but then as well, I always want to be making an invitation for the part of us that goes, what if we could just move beyond? Like, what if we could be comfortable and evolve? What if we could be safe and evolve? Because that for me, everything I've been doing are what I call experiments in collective evolution. And for teachers, we can be fostering that without having to think we're better than or bigger than anybody. Um, I, I I answer usually. It's so funny because I often don't even remember what I answered when people ask me later. But whenever I teach, the sense for me is that there's whatever I know, and then I move slightly to the left to make more space for the field, for insight to come in unexpected places. And I really encourage everyone who's teaching, who's writing, to play in that space and just see what happens. It might feel weird a little bit at first. You may have some insights where you're like, "Whoa, where did that come from? That was interesting." Um, but it's a powerful way for those of us who are teachers to play.
Amazing. So part of our thanks for sharing that. So part of our focus as well, or as we are, evolving forward, part of the paradigm shifts that we're talking a lot about in the summit is shifting the wealth consciousness and shifting the way that we relate to not only just money, but we relate to doing business. And you mentioned a lot about this. You brought up the elements of collaboration. We call it like more of the divine feminine form of
Exactly.
allowing both divine feminine and masculine to work together
Hmm.
to see the world as connection and collaboration. So describe a bit more about your vision and when we are able to have a world where that becomes the norm, like what do you see and how have you, I know you've already integrated a lot of the practices into the way that you're doing business, and how has that unfolded, and where do you see sort of, yeah, what's your vision when all of this is in that sort of divine balance?
Yeah, I think that we have had a gross imbalance of yang energy for way, way too long. It's part of why even I hope you can hear this in even the way that I do my work. Like I'm not about breakthroughs. Even in the personal development world, I feel like even with as many women that are writing, like, they're often writing again in this yang place of like destroy. Like it's so funny when I studied NLP, there were things called like the what was it? Something a belief obliterator. Um, there was a something else that was a smasher. I was like, what is this? Like a monster truck rally? And luckily where I studied that was not the case, but I was listening to a lot of this. But I think this, so it's definitely infected those of us, this imbalance who are working in the personal development world. So what I've tried to do is step into way more yin energy, into receptive, into collaborative. um, and it's interesting because one of the biggest things that I think we need to play with moving forward is this notion that we have to be a brand, that we have to be an island, that I'm supposed to be the solution for everything. So if you watch what I'm doing, I'm reaching out to my friends. I'm reaching out to people who are brilliant. We just completed a class with the brilliant Luis Chapa, who's literally a world-renowned opera singer. Some of the best movement, breath, work that I can imagine. The new class I'm teaching around trauma is with Dr. Lori Layden. She is phenomenal. When I first met her, we were at a conference that Evan Pagan had invited 100 of his smartest friends to the desert for a few days, and I was there as his personal evolution expert. which feels really amazing. But then you sit down to next to Dr. Lori Layden, who says, "Oh yeah, I just came from working in Sandy Hook after the shooting happened at the elementary school there for 3 years with teachers, students, and kids." And you're like, "Wow, I'm the personal evolution expert. This woman is like the personal evolution expert." And I fell in love with her as like just a spirit and a beautiful, compassionate soul. So for me, the biggest thing we have to do is stop pretending that we own anything in this world of in this knowledge base. So we go, this is my little thing I figured out. I'm like, no, you didn't. You did not figure this out. It's so funny to me. So much of what I do is based, I'm standing on the shoulders of Buddhists who created the Maitri Buddhist practices 1,000 years ago. NLP looks like Buddhist practices to me all the time. Um, we're standing on the shoulders of so many traditions. Now we're creating in new ways. Like there's stuff that I've done that nobody's done quite this way. But I also don't go, you can never show anybody that technique I just did where you talk to parts of you. I'm like, show everybody, show kids, teach people this work. Like we need to stop holding on to these things as if we're in scarcity and fear all the time. And to me, that's the way that, we create what's sometimes called a giving economy, where there's actual flow. Because right now we have this sense like there will never be enough because I am not enough. So the biggest thing we could do to change the economy, for in my mind, is to change the notion that I'm not enough. As soon as I am enough, there is enough. We stop having to stockpile things. We start connecting with people, and we know that if I don't have enough for a minute, somebody will help me. That's how I've built my life. When other people don't have enough, I've helped them. When COVID started, I bought so much food because I knew that I was going to have friends who were service workers who were going to find a place where they didn't have enough food. And I could just be like, oh, I made you something, like in a way that didn't make them feel bad. Right. It was just like, oh, I was cooking and I thought I might share this with you. You want to come over and have some, or can you take some home? So, so to me, this is a fundamental shift in the way that we understand what we're doing and the way we connect to other human beings. Because this notion that we have to stockpile to hold back, it's unnecessary and destructive. But as soon as we start looking at folks and we go, oh, Teresa or B or Barbara or Pat, like they all have gifts that together when we start playing, or Jelena, like we start playing together and the gifts we have, 1 plus 1 isn't 2, it's 100. Right? We start to create our stone soup together and we make something magical, because I don't need my name on it and B doesn't need her name on it and Teresa's not like, I branded this and trademarked it. Like, why is this part of our healing world? Like, to me it's so silly. um I'll say one last thing here. My big hope coming out of COVID is that one of the gifts of COVID has been, for many of us, a rethinking of the way we've lived our lives. And I've had conversations with people around the world, who've said to me, "My life has been disrupted, and I've realized that what I'm doing does not work. It does not bring me happiness. Um, I've been working too much for money, for stuff." And what's interesting is when you give people a year when they can't hug their kids or their grandkids or their neighbors, all of a sudden we actually realize, what's really important is that I could go give a friend a hug, that we could connect with each other. Um, so to me, this is part of all the part of the shift, which I hope is happening. We're doing our part. Everyone on this call is doing their part to do what we can.
I just wanted to like take a deep breath into like if there's any parts of us that even like hidden that don't feel enough, let's just like all let it go together. So let's
Mm,
take a deep breath into that. Are there any hiding parts or anything that still wants to kind of stay to protect you? Just breathe into that.
mm,
And just feel safe being enough, even if it's like the 10th layer that you've been working on this, or even if you already have moved past this. Just let that settle. And if we want to like extend that to our family and friends who we
mm,
see who are hurting as well in this area, or who are. Let's just like breathe into that collectively and send it out collectively.
Mm.
That feeling of enoughness, of, group support, and really ultimately love and the abundance of that.
Mm.
Breathing into your heart and really just shining that light out. Thank you for taking us here.
That was beautiful, honey. What a great way to close our time. I just
Mm-hmm.
feel so sweet with that. Before we close, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for gathering all of the people who are in this room. Thank you for gathering all of the speakers. Thank you for bringing your wisdom and your insight and your passion and your gentle spirit. Um, I see you, and I'm so glad that you are doing the work you're doing in the world. You're creating a pathway for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you guys. Thank you all. Thank you, Scott. Barbara, she's going tomorrow for her
Ah,
Money is
cool.
Love Fusion Chamber. So
Ooh.
definitely join us for that. I'll have another one tomorrow where I'm also doing a live thing. And we have Brenda today, who is a Brazilian Zouk dancer, one of the people
Mm.
who inspired me to go on a dance journey from a YouTube channel, so or YouTube videos. So definitely look at how free and in alignment she is with her body in the
Mm.
video. So we do a meditation where I speak and bring in the synchronistic wealth meditation. She dances to it. That was a collaboration moment.
Wow,
It
that's
was so much
cool.
fun. Yeah, and we have so many things cooking. But Scott, gosh, Dr. Scott, you are amazing. You blow my heart wide open every time
Mm.
that we connect, and you're just so realistic and spiritual and all these other things. Look at this chat just pouring out love to you. If
Oh,
anyone wants to say last words before we head off, just unmute yourself and just jump in. And, it's such an honor to have all of you and all of us together.
mm.
I just want to thank you both, and so good to meet you, Scott, and to this has been just a beautiful experience with you today.
Ah, thank you.
Really appreciate what your work, and I'm really right with you with the marketing. I'm right there with all. Yeah. So, thank you.
Beautiful. So I'll let you know. I forgot to tell you if you all want to hear more of what I'm doing. I do this live podcast every Wednesday, and it's been extraordinary. I invite people like Hani. Hani hasn't been on the podcast yet, but she will be eventually. I will get her on the schedule. It's a weird time for her, but it's 9 a.m. every Wednesday, and we bring amazing people in. We've had award-winning filmmakers, authors, healers of all kinds, and that's the place where this conversation keeps going. It's free. And the cool thing is if you go to it's at bit.ly/human evolutionaries. So that's bit.ly/human evolutionaries. If you get on the invite list, you can come afterwards and ask everybody we interview questions. It's extraordinary that they stick around and talk. And um, so for anybody who's just meeting me, that would be the place to kind of come be more in this conversation because it's such an important conversation.
And also, you have something called Prosperity Evolved, or you also have a little gift for everyone. So, do you want to share a little
We
bit about that?
That was the gift. We
Okay.
moved because we're teaching the Prosperity Evolved course. And if anybody's really interested in that, we've got a couple spots and you can reach out to my team at support@scottwmills.com. But we moved the gift we were giving into the human evolutionaries because we really wanted to keep our attention there. Um, so yeah, that's the best way to get, I mean, really a ton of stuff from us is, and somebody just asked me to type it, so I'll put it in here for you. It's a weird address, but it's short. Human evolutionaries is actually the term that I use to think about people. I think that's what we all are. So it's bit.ly and then just the word human and the word evolutionaries. Um, Yeah, and that'll keep you, I promise that will keep you chomping for quite a while. And you can also go to Spotify or iTunes and listen to all the past guests. I think a few folks, like I know Pat's been on, Teresa's been on a lot. B, I mean, I think you all have experienced there's some extraordinary people who show up, and I'm just blown away every week. And every time I listen to the podcasts afterwards to approve them before they go up, I'm just like, wow, we are so lucky to have these conversations with folks.
Oh, yeah. So keep evolving. Take this and really integrate it. And we have just so much love for everyone as we continuously, lift each other up, hug
Mm.
each other energetically. And we have one more day for the summit, and we will continue this energy in all these different places. So, yeah, big shout outs for showing up and just being here and being you. And we're so excited, for what comes out as you continuously evolve.
Mm, beautiful.
Mwah.
Bye, everyone.
See ya. See you tomorrow. Good night.